Got Chris in the booth, got Omar too. All the lucky listeners know we do it for you. Not your common conversations, back with the new. And we speaking the truth like they need us to do. Ain't not your common conversation, not your common conversation, not your common conversation. Word is on and we on and we on.
All right, here we are. Another installment of Not Your Common Conversation. One more time. Not your common conversation. That's right. We're rocking it out. I'm here with my main man, Omar Henderson.
Hey-o.
And I'm here. I'm Chris Downing, right?
Yeah, you're Chris Downing.
The real Chris Downing.
Don't forget yourself.
For those of you who are on IG. Welcome back to
what episode is this, 14?
I think this is 14. I think this is 14.
And they're lucky, though.
Yeah.
You lucky listeners got 14 episodes.
That's what I was trying to get out, you lucky listeners. We can't do this without you lucky listeners.
Exactly.
So yeah, Omar, I wanted to get this recorded on the mic. We oftentimes have these great conversations.
Exactly.
And you told me right in the middle, stop.
Yep. Want to save the energy for tomorrow.
For the podcast.
Exactly. Don't want to rehash it and have to regenerate and all that stuff. There's something about having the conversation in the moment that brings up the emotion, the information, all of that energy that swells up when you're having it in the moment.
Sometimes it's hard to recall. Sometimes.
Exactly.
So
or in the same way that you had it over the phone, we'll say something profound.
Right.
Yesterday, and we're like, what is it that I said?
Yeah.
Or what was it that you said?
Absolutely. Like I'm about to ask you now. What was it that we were talking about?
So, anyway, what we were talking about was, I paraphrased it into one word, which is polarization. Mm-hmm. And, but actually, more specifically, you were talking about judgment and generalization when we have a tendency as human beings to see other human beings, and based on that appearance, we have a whole story about that human being. And so, if they're distinguished as a particular race, we have a story about that. If they're distinguished as wearing a particular type of clothing, we have a story about that. I mean, some of it's obvious. I mean, if you see a guy in dingy overalls, chances are he's doing construction. All right, so
or he's a street person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what happens, to your point. That's oftentimes what happens in social media and on the internet. And we often, listen, I'll speak for myself. I get up at, oftentimes early in the morning. I'm embarrassed to say 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm, in the bed with the covers on me, and I'm on, IG, I'm on Facebook, I'm on all these different platforms, which, goes down a rabbit hole. Hour and a half later, I'm like, damn, I can't get that time back. But my bigger point is that you see something on the internet, on these platforms, and people showing up their best ways, posing curated information, and we oftentimes think that's who they are. And you see them in real life or meet them in real life. No, that was just an appearance. That was something they were trying to, And so we live into it. And so we even do that with our neighbors. I think we do it with people at work. We do it. We look at somebody. I mean, this is how I believe prejudice, racism, all casteism, they're smart, and we put their country and so therefore they can't be jazz. People can't be more than one thing. And we live in a multi-dimensional universe, but somehow we look at things very one way, very flat, one or two dimensional. And I mean, if you were to really go into the spirit world, I don't want to get too deep, that some could say that's 5-dimensional, 7-dimensional. I don't know, but it's certainly more than what meets the eye. And so you can't just sort of look at something and say that's it.
It's called, okay, got it.
The old
So,
saying, you can't judge a book by its cover.
You can't judge a book by its cover. Understood. So you said a mouthful right there.
Yeah.
And there were quite a few things about which I wanted
As
to
I
respond, but
oftentimes do.
I also wanted you to finish your point. Oh my God! Now, what are they? Gee.
You mean the points of finish my point of seeing things on platforms or trying to jog your memory?
Your point of how we cast, the judgment, the story, all of that. And this is the other side of that conversation,
right?
Without actually exploring or having the conversation or finding out more about this particular person or this particular subject. Some people do, but I think for the most part, we tend to
judge.
Yeah, and we stick with those judgments. And at some point, I want to talk about the upcoming presidential election and how this way of being with all of us is going to show up in that election.
It's weird, man, because we see these people and we know they've gotten pardon my French, but their shit stinks like all our shit stinks. But we start putting this thing on them like, oh, you're not. It's almost like they're not human because they're the president or because they're your preacher or because your pastor or whatever. They're also human. And they screw up just like all humans screw up. We're all flawed. But I feel like we don't have a real conversation. Like it's not a real one. We got these two people, these two parties, and we got to decide. That's what we're given. Those are the choices we have to make. Yeah. And we know how flawed the two of them. I mean, they're both elderly people.
One's stinky and the other one's stanky.
Right, exactly. Pretty much. That was great. One stinky and one stanky.
Exactly.
And so they both smell. But
I haven't.
I mean, and so it's like, come on, guys, and we sit there and they both parties go back and forth, hurling rocks at each other.
Yeah,
and it's just ridiculous.
And the people who support either party are unwilling to listen because they have these fixed opinions and this fixed way of being towards the opposition, and so regardless of what is brought out, what nuggets of gold or what light is shined on anything, they will stick with that particular whatever side they choose to be on.
And even worse, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because I think, and I could be wrong, because they don't want to look bad by having made a wrong choice.
Right, and they want to win because there's something for them.
That's what your friend Phil always says. They want to win.
They want to win, and I know, which is at any stake, by any means necessary. And they don't seem to have anybody's interest in mind but their own.
That's the name of the game. It's interesting because right now, so we live in the area of Washington, D.C., and the basketball team and the hockey team are ready to they want to move out to a neighboring suburb. So they want to move out of the city into a neighboring suburb.
Right.
And
big deal in the local news.
Exactly.
In the DMV.
Exactly. So the owners that be, the powers that be, want to go to the capital city of Virginia, and I will say enroll the Congress and the state Senate into buying into this. Right. But then somebody brought up a very good question. What about the locals who have to deal with the traffic of construction, number one, and then the traffic of the games, and the noise, and the rabble-rousing, and, possibly whatever comes up out of that. And that, so what's interesting, so here's my point, here's what I'm getting at. So the members of the state Congress supposedly represent these neighborhoods. Right? Supposedly represent, but then the ones in the state Congress have passed a bill that said, yeah, go ahead and build it. Now it's up to the state Senate. So the Congress members are representing these same people who are like, so I'm getting back to your point. Do they really hear the people that they represent? Are they really hearing and representing these people? Or are they just making a decision after they get elected?
Well, I think it's hard to do. I mean, here's
and see the thing, and how does that get back to our point is this goes on And then they turn around and want us to vote for them again. So then we're supposed to turn a blind eye and follow faithfully because we're a part of that party.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, and because we don't have much other choices, there aren't a lot of choices at the table.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's why they keep it these two parties. Because if it were multiple parties, it would be a lot different. But they keep it. I mean, the two parties really have an interest in only keeping the two parties because that means that they don't have it. It's like a monopoly, like AT&T and Verizon. Now enter T-Mobile or any other, things got to change. See, when you put a third in there, that's what makes it change.
No doubt.
Or more, third or more. And so, and they know that. It's all self-interest. They get us, it's a sad thing. I mean, politics is, I kind of almost don't even want to, I have no taste to even talk about it because it's just ridiculous.
It's disappointing.
It's disappointing, but going back to the point I think we're trying to make is that you can't judge a book by its cover, and we oftentimes do this. And I don't know, what would elevate us to really take the time out and think, here's the point. Here's what I was saying the other day. It's too easy to do that. But if you were to take patience like a neighbor, you could see, I have neighbors, and I see them coming in and out of the house. Several years. I've been in this place, coming up on 6 years. And it's not until I engage and have a conversation, and it's exciting too, by the way, because all what I might have, and it could be the smallest thing, the way they back out of their driveway, what time they come in the house, go in and out the house, the colors. I can make the mind is amazing. I can make a whole story up, series on Netflix. And then I meet them and we start to engage and talk, and all that possibly goes away. Like they start really, I'm this and I'm that, and some things that we have in common. And so I start to look at them in the way closer and closer to myself. It becomes relatable. But wouldn't it be something if we did that in the world? Like we were patient enough to get to understand people that might look different and might be on the opposing side, that have more things in common with us than we ever imagined. And it opens up a world. But we tend to like teams. We like America against everybody else. We like, we like to pick teams. And we're kids or something. It's made up. And so how about picking the team of humanity? Like what's best for humanity? And I hate to sound corny, but really like, what if, you had the same interest for someone else as you had in yourself, for yourself? If you looked at the person that cut you off, instead of getting pissed off and knowing that either one of you own the road and you're sharing it with a lot of people, and that person might have an emergency, and the only thing they did was just cut you off, which, by the way, probably added a half a second more to your life.
I would change cut you off to veered in the same lane you're in.
Yeah.
Because cut you off is a story.
Sure.
It's not like they cut you off from what? What did they actually cut you off from?
Yeah, you're right.
It's not like you got IVs and shit.
Right.
Connected to your house that are,
that. Or even the same lane, like you said, because for some reason we think where we're driving is ours. It's ours. For that moment, it's our and
lane.
It's not.
Exactly.
But
you're in the way of my lane.
Tunnel vision. We're so tunnel vision thinking that.
Yeah, we think about ourselves. So so that's really great. So if you driving down the road are thinking about yourself, what do you expect I'm thinking about?
Yourself.
Exactly.
And so that's the duel.
So when I turn
the sword off,
when I shift lanes,
right,
there's something that's in my way. There's something that's
all
either
that.
in my way or I need to get to. So yeah.
But because we're all in that stage of us against them. we automatically
get
go,
pissed off.
they did that to fuck with me.
Exactly.
They don't know who you are. They're listening to a different station.
Exactly.
They have a whole nother world that they're into.
Right.
And in most cases, excuse me, they aren't giving a fuck about what you're doing. Excuse my language. They don't care anything about what you're doing. I don't know why I'm cursing so much.
Their number one priority.
Right, and vice versa. So why don't we cut each other a break and not be so into our worlds? The bigger picture is that not only humans share this world with other humans, but they share this world with other living things, other animals, seen and unseen. But for some reason, we don't care about anything but what we're into. Our babies, our job, our house, our car, our this, our that. We are, I'm reading this book or listening to this book, again, recommended by my wonderful therapist. Shout out to shout out to Dr. Becker because I love her. I just love her so much. But she recommended this book some years ago, and I just picked it up again. It's called The Seat of the Soul. I recommend it to everyone. The Seat of the Soul. I can't think of the author right now, but unbelievable. And he talks about he has sections split up into relationships, power, addiction. Oh God. I mean, so he deals with a lot of different things that we deal with as human beings.
So what, give me like one snippet or something that you got from the book. Like share with us like something you read, impacted your life, and bam.
That's great. Let me see if I can recall. So the power thing.
Okay.
So there's a chapter on power.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chapter in addiction, and he talks about sexual addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about all addiction in general,
mm-hmm.
but he points to sexual addiction. He says one of the things when we want someone, when we're looking for sex, we're actually looking for love.
Okay.
And so. And when an addiction, when we're dealing with addiction and we're falling prey to addiction, we're actually falling prey to being powerless. So we look for a crutch, something to make us whole in that moment.
Okay.
And so the book deals with our souls. Like it really speaks to we're really spirits having a human experience.
Yeah.
And he deals with the soul, the connection of our soul. Mm-hmm. Like he says, even when you're dealing with your addiction, you're really dealing with your soul, the inadequacies of your soul.
Interesting.
And so, yeah. And so their thing, when he has you look at things completely different, because we keep looking at things in this human experience, which is fine. But this human experience appeals to our egos. When you deal with things in a soul spiritual, I now am part of you and you're part of me, because it's less of a tangible thing.
Yeah.
We
totally get it.
Yeah. So he deals with we are not our car. You've mentioned this in a previous part. We are not our cars.
Yeah.
We are not our homes. We're not our children. We're not our spouse.
Right.
But we keep taking it on. And it's not because it's less really sometimes about us caring about them and more about how they represent us.
Oh yeah, totally. It's so funny. Yeah, because I had a conversation earlier today with a young lady who is in a relationship, and she has a problem dealing with the children of her partner.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gary Zukav. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Gary Zukav.
And what got cleared up was that her partner's child treats her partner the way my friend would not treat an adult.
Right.
Right. So
her
basically,
her partner.
Her partner's child treats her partner the way my friend, the one that's in this relationship, would not have treated her mother. You understand what I'm saying? Her partner's child treats her partner. So this child treats their mother
Their mother.
in a way unlike my friend would have treated her mother. In other words, she doesn't agree with how the child treats the mother. She doesn't agree with
The
how
child doesn't.
No, my friend
Doesn't
doesn't agree
agree
with how the child treats her
them.
mother.
Got it.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we got to, because that's a violation of her value. She would never treat a parent like this.
Right.
And so she expects other children to not treat parents that way.
Right. She's imposed kind of transposing herself on
another child.
on
And
another
yet
child.
and yet that child and mother, the way they communicate, everybody's fine with it.
Except her.
The
From
one
looking
who's
from
not-
the outside.
Yeah,
Right,
looking in
right.
from the outside.
I mean, again,
is disturbed by it.
yeah, because people go to what their references are, and I guess that's her reference.
That is her reference.
But has she?
But it's also a value of hers too.
Yeah.
It's a reference and a value.
But all she has to do is get into their world and out of her world for a second. Pardon yourself. This is not your different time, different relation, different people, and really get present to what their world is and why they operate. I mean, good or bad. I'm not judging, but again, oftentimes people can only see from the lens of
their life,
their experience, and that's quite naturally.
Yeah.
But let's try to be a little more giving, understanding, and not that you don't put some of your own experiences into it, but you also have to also listen to the other person. I mean, this happens in relationships.
That's where it's most difficult.
Yeah. So
and people who are closest to you.
Absolutely. I have a lot of different friends, male and female, and oftentimes, every time I have to remind myself that each person is a different person, and don't be careful not to bring your last relationship or your last experiences and references into this relationship, because oftentimes you can ruin it. And I'm talking any kind of relationship, your brother to brother, friend to friend, business partner. Like, you really have to, every relationship deserves its own merit, its own space, its own time, because everybody's different. It's a different time, and we evolved. Even with yourself, you've got to excuse yourself, or should I say, allow yourself the space to evolve. Like, who I was 5 years ago is not exactly who I am now, because I've been exposure. I've had a chance to look at myself differently. I'm a different person as I get older. I've got more information. I've had more sessions with my therapist. There are a number of variables that have people grow. But oftentimes people deal with people as though, when they were 15 years old, as brothers and sisters. And it's like, dude, I know you're my brother, I know you're my sister, but we've allowed each other to have grown over the time period, and share with me what you've learned, and I'll share with you what I learned, so that we can grow as people who say they care and love one another.
Yeah, so there's a prerequisite to that.
Okay.
And that is forgiving ourselves.
Forgiving ourselves. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Allowing and forgiving ourselves. So this is interesting because when you go back to, if you go into like scripture and stuff like that, right? God created. Oh my God! Here we go. So I'll give you from the Quranic reference. There are some similarities, but when God created Adam
in the Bible, with the Quran
Bible. Yeah. When God created Adam, according to Quranic law or whatever, when God created Adam, the angels said, "Are you going to create someone who's going to bring about confusion and mischief?" Right. I swear to God, it's in the Quran.
Right.
All right. They were like, "Whoa, wait a minute. No, what? You're going to do what?" Because they knew the nature of man. They knew the angels knew his nature. Yeah. Now, so parallel, in the Christian world, man is known to be flawed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
All right. And in the Muslim world, the angels knew that the man was flawed. He's like, he's mischievous, he's chaotic, he's confused, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So all that's fine.
He's a man.
Right.
Or she's a woman.
But you know who has the hardest time admitting it?
Who?
Man.
Right. Man doesn't want to do it.
He doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
So he tries to hide it, and in trying to hide it, I'm sorry, but in trying to hide it, more of it shows up.
Wow, that sounds like an election. Right, that sounds like an election. I mean, it's like, yeah, because you can't.
So my point being is that in trying to hide it, man, us, we aren't forgiving ourselves for the fact that we are flawed.
Oh God, that is so wonderful.
And so we don't accept it from other people.
We don't accept it from
because we can't even forgive ourselves.
Thus, it's hard for us to take a compliment.
Oh my God!
It's like what?
Oh yeah.
We walk it back. No.
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
It's like no, I'm
Somebody
not.
says you're a beautiful person, and your mind goes, yeah, but I got a hair that's out of place behind my ear,
right?
You know that you don't see right now, but once you see it, you'll know that I'm not beautiful.
We got a guilt complex. We won't bend into our flaws.
Yeah.
Or we won't. I was telling someone, I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine earlier today, and I said, she was saying how much she, through her challenges, she was actually, I think she was actually thanking me for, through our friendship, our relationship, we have been better people. Working, understanding one another's flaws, right? And I was saying, and that's in the book, that's where we learn the most in our flaw, in our screw ups.
Yeah,
like,
right.
What if we could just literally lean in and own our screw ups in the way that we own our victories? Because we learn through that. Like, give in, like. Walk around. Yes, I messed up, and here's what I'm up to learning.
Right, that's scary though.
It's vulnerable.
It's scary.
It's scary.
It's scary.
It's also surrendering.
If you want to be successful, you have to fail, and fail is kind of painful.
Yeah,
but we perceive it as painful.
We perceive it as, but God says somewhere in the Bible, since we're talking about the Bible or the Quran, is that. It's a whole thing of like, you're going to mess up. There's a whole, and I forgot the quote, like we learn, this is where we learn things. You're going to, that's where it's so instructional. Like here's all, you're going to screw up. So I'm going to give you some commandments to help you along the way. Just a little cheat sheet. Here's a cheat sheet so you don't lie, goddammit. Don't kill. Don't fuck with your neighbor's girl. Don't blaspheme me. Here's a cheat sheet. Don't mess up. But we throw it to the side. I'm saying me included.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, yeah. That's because we want to be, like at some point even a toddler wants to declare their independence.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But we get out of our egos take us way past that.
So the toddler wants to declare their independence by reaching for the glass that's on the countertop, and they can drink from it by themselves.
Right.
All of a sudden, even though we, the parent, know that's really not. It's not the time yet.
It's not the time yet.
It's not the time.
Right. You're not ready.
You're not ready. But they want to do it.
We want to, and so now we're in a place, I think, society-wise, where that times a billion, because we're out of control. It's just out of control. We've taken this whatever. In some way, I wish AI would come and help us be better people. Don't take over. Just help us be better, because we have. Remind us of our spirit selves. Remind us of give each other grace and love, and stop, making each other guilty and feeling bad, and discover the truth. Like lean into the truth. The truth will set you free. Like own your truth. Don't make up little stuff.
So here's a question that I have for you, because this came up earlier in your conversation. But before I get there, I want to get into a comment, because you said something about, we all have different backgrounds, different flavors, and that more than any time before, as far as I can tell, is showing up, because you got the gender identity switchers, and then you got people who, who are involved in same-sex relationships, and then, I don't know. Those are the two major things right there. And then you have, I want to say a heightened recognition of all cultures that are non-white. I mean, what I mean by that is like this: the population of Americans, I think African Americans make up between 13 and 20% of the population in America, right?
Yeah.
But now you're seeing more and more TV shows and commercials with more and more African American involvement. Now, there are some parts in the country where you can walk into a room and there are no black people. I mean, as close as Ellicott City, because last week I went to scope out a place that I'm going to be playing in, and I walked in there, and there was not a black soul in there.
Right.
And this is between D.C. and Baltimore.
How'd that make you feel?
I was cool with it. As long as they were happy, I was happy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it seemed to me like people went out of their way to be friendly and nice for some reason.
Good for them and for you.
Exactly. So,
I mean, you could have said, "Oh, this is not the place for me. I don't see any relations."
I could have.
That's not who you are.
Yeah, that's not. My nickname is "We Are the World." So.
Yeah, and we are the world. God damn, what happened to that? Speaking of "We Are the World," what happened to that? Like, is that just silly?
It raised, well, like any other song, it goes out of style, but it did raise $80 million to feed people in Africa. But
about that.
But wait a minute. So there was that point, and I think that so there's that point. Yeah, there's all these different walks of lives, all these different that's happening with people, and so you're kind of like at no choice but to be accepting of what's so, and not have it mean anything about us personally, or not, or even, I would dare say, not to impose our values on them. But okay, all right. But then there was something else. Oh God, there was something else that I wanted to. Oh, here was my question.
Okay.
So when you meet someone, you, Chris Downing, you meet someone who, in the world is flawless.
I love meeting people.
Let's just say you walk into a room and Taylor Swift is right there.
Woo! Taylor Swift.
You know what I'm saying?
Got my Swiftie band
Exactly.
on. Go ahead.
Make sure your hair is combed, your teeth are brushed, all that stuff.
All that.
All right. You get to know her, and then you find out something about her that's completely vulnerable. When that comes up, how do you feel about that?
Oh, that's great. I look for those opportunities for Taylor Swift or anyone for that matter, because that means there's a chance for us to move past what I might perceive.
Right.
And I see a commonality or relatability, and then it's like, wow, there's an opportunity to know Taylor Swift past this facade of Taylor Swift, because I know she's a regular person like I am. I know that she's a fan of James Taylor, and so am I, Taylor Swift. I love James Taylor,
and so Chris's number is
right. And here's the deal. This is the other thing. I think people have this notion that if a man meets a woman or a woman meets a man, then there's got to be some kind of romance. Listen, I would respect. First of all, the first thing I would respect is Kelsey. One, I'm a fan, a Kansas City fan.
Right.
Shout out to Patrick Mahomes, and two, I respect their union and what they have as human beings. So I would never want to intrude on that.
Right.
And her being here, the fact that she's a cute white girl, and I'm a cute old black man, handsome old black. I mean, it has really nothing. It has very little to do with the fact that we as humans could make a connection beyond anybody's notion of what humans are supposed to be, man or woman, black or white, young or old. Like, we don't have to be confined to what those notions are. We at that moment and any time, regardless of gender, age, color, can communicate because we have a common understanding of being human, being spirits, sharing a human experience. So
Got it.
yeah.
So I wanna share an experience of mine, not with Taylor Swift, but in general.
Oh, okay.
And then I want to pose the question to our lucky listeners. So so I have come to embrace vulnerability on many levels, not all. And you know that's a flaw that's a flaw that I have because it's
a
not
wonderful
in all areas.
flaw.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, but the point what used to happen was when I got to witness a person's vulnerability,
Yeah.
I all of a sudden felt guilty and responsible.
Wow.
I know.
That's a trip.
I know.
So
Like I needed to protect them in some way.
how'd that work out?
I needed to protect
Super
I
Omar.
needed to protect the image that they had projected. Like I needed to protect it.
Okay.
It's weird.
Okay.
It's weird.
Okay, but
So
you recognize it.
So I ask, you all, our lucky listeners, when you actually witness someone else's vulnerability, what immediately comes up for you? What's right there in your heart, in your mind? Do you feel like you've got them trapped? Do you feel like you're more
superior?
Do you feel superior, or do you feel at ease with that person, or do you feel subservient to that person because you don't want their public enemy all of a sudden, not enemy, public image all of a sudden to be diminished? What's your experience of being with someone else's vulnerability?
Like if somebody, I tell you, if I can interrupt, there was something I learned. There was a friend of mine whose grandmother, I was in my 20s, probably late 20s, and their grandmother died. They're from New Orleans, and New Orleans has a ritual with death and that kind of thing. I don't think I had been to New Orleans at that time, but so I didn't understand the whole thing of it. But it meant a lot to her, and going through the ritual. For me at that time was like, okay, death is something none of us get out alive. Death is something that happens to all of us. And not, I wasn't cold in the moment. She felt that way. I felt like she felt like I didn't prolong the ritual long enough. After a week, I was like, oh. But for her, and not just people from New Orleans. I mean, people. I mean, it's the fact that a person no longer physically exists for them, it's hard to deal with, and I understand that. But it was almost like she wanted to be, I don't know what it was for her. I mean, to be quite honest, but I know that I didn't feel, I guess, consoling enough, or I didn't feel present enough to her and what she was feeling and going through, and so.
That's interesting.
That always stuck in my mind, but I know from so
that was a vulnerable point for her.
That was a vulnerable point for her. Now something that comes up that it's very hard when people go through death and that kind of thing. Like I'm probably even now it's like, okay, they're dead and that's fine. You know what I mean? But for them, and I understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand, like, because I've had people die in my life. My father died. There are friends of mine that died.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I've been close to death. But I don't process it like a sad. It's almost like, oh, well, they get to go to the party. I mean. I get just sad that they're not going to be here, but for me, that's a little selfish. It's like, let go. Let people let go. Let them move on and go through transition in their movement. There's nothing to hold on to. You experienced that experience, human experience that you had with them was just that, a human experience. It doesn't mean in my mind that it's over. You might connect with them spiritually, another plane, but I don't get and I'm better even now. Like I'm okay with letting go with things. Like I'm just let go. Like it's it's almost like having a flower or a leaf that wants to grow, and you just keep holding on to it because you don't want it to go anywhere but in your hands. But it's got to go. Or a bird or a butterfly. It's got to move past you. So understand that all this stuff that we're in right now, whatever it is temporary. This is a temporary situation we're in. Whether you're here 30, 40, 50, 80 years, whatever, none of us get out alive. This is a temporary experience. What you should focus on is what your experience is all about while you're here. That's why you should keep it precious. Like, we're letting days and times go by and not talking to each other and burying our heads in our phones like I sometimes do and all that. And that's lifeless.
Yeah, so, that's interesting because I'm sure each of us and those of you who are watching and listening,
right.
Here's another question. What is it around? What are you polarized? What are you polarized around that you are unwilling to have a conversation with another person from another pole about? And would you be willing to risk being vulnerable enough to go out there and have that conversation? That one conversation that I have with, whomever that I don't agree with could begin to create a domino effect. So, yeah, it may not happen in our lifetime, but, taking that step today would make a huge difference 100 years from now for your descendants and your descendants and all that stuff. Listen, I'm not here to preach. I'm just here to ask the question.
Great stuff.
What would it be like if, if you just made that move? Where we're headed right now, I can't even pass the judgment that says we're headed for doom because I don't really know what the future holds.
True.
It's funny because one of my father's quotes was, the calm came before the storm. The storm is just a part of life. At one point there were dinosaurs and then there were mammals and cavemen and everything was cold. So when the dinosaurs were here, everything was hot. And then when the caveman and the mammals come, everything was cold. And then here we are today, driving around in Porsches.
right. Electric cars.
Electric cars.
What are you complaining about?
Exactly. Things, change is a constant.
Change.
So there's embracing the fact that, we have different points of view, different opinions. And then there's the opportunity of having conversations. Listen, we're not going to beat the other person into submission to win victory over the world. That just isn't going to happen. That just is not going to. Nope. It's been tried.
And
it's been
as
tried.
It worked.
And so insanity ensues. Why? The same thing, expecting a different result, never happening. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Let's try something different. Let's have these conversations that really... I remember once sitting at my sister's house and I was saying, and they were flabbergasted. I said to them, Republicans and Democrats all want the same thing.
Pretty much.
And they were like, you got to be kidding me.
I know.
They wanted to argue that, but they all want the same thing. Basically, when you look at the basic needs of humanity, we all want security from failure, which, you can try to avoid, but you're going to fail somewhere in life. You want to feel safe. You want to have an education.
Yeah.
You want to have access to food. You want to have housing. Everybody wants the same thing.
Because they're all humans.
And we all want all of us to get along. We all want all of us to be able to be cohesive. And so, but we can't leave it up to the politicians who say, I'm going to create unity, because they're not. It's up to us to do it. It's really up to us as individual human beings. We can't really leave our responsibility in their hands. Anyway.
Well said.
Well, I've preached, and that was not my intention to preach.
Well, you said some good things. I think people can walk away. One of the main reasons I listen to podcasts, and I hope other people listen to podcasts, is that, you get some food for thought. You get something to think about. You learn something. You understand something. You get turned on to something. And so I think that's worth listening to. and we're coming to you live and direct with love. And if I would say, I'm gonna I think we're about to come to a close. Any last parting words?
No.
Okay, well,
I apologize if I came across as a preacher. That wasn't.
I don't think you have to apologize.
Okay.
I think it was great.
All right.
I mean, me personally, that's me. But if any of you lucky listeners think that he came across preaching, he apologizes. I just want to leave. I want to say one parting words. I want to leave you all with the thought of being fearless and choosing love.
Oh, right. Love that. Yeah, being fearless. Oh, my God.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, okay, Chris, so what does being fearless look like when choosing love?
Ooh. Okay.
Ooh.
I'll step up to the plate. I think that let me step back and think about that. So the question is, what does fearless look like in choosing love?
Yeah.
I think being open. I think being vulnerable. I think a lot of what we just mentioned, surrendering, being patient with yourself and those around you, especially with yourself first. I think love emanates from, it has to start inside of you first, before you can spread it, purely. And so it's not that one isn't afraid of, like I personally aren't crazy about snakes. But so it's not necessarily the fear of I pray every time I'm on a plane. So it's not that you don't have any kind of fear, but that you are in the face of fear, you are choosing to subscribe to a way of lovingness in the face of fear, and saying, hey, instead of looking at this as a negative, there's something to learn here, even in my most vulnerable and pressing time. I mean, oftentimes, I've been sick, and it's at those times that I'm most understanding of love and want to just get really in tune with myself. And so it's not that I have no fear at all, but in the face of fear, I am making the decision to choose love.
All right. That's beautiful, man. I appreciate that. And I would like to say, in light of that, when faced with your political opposite, your social opposite, your whatever opposite, it's like, yeah, you're going to be afraid of being whatever, dominated, made wrong, whatever. And you can choose a way that allows you to just cut through all of that and be with that person. And that's pretty much.
That's sweet, man. No, I mean, I'm serious. When I hear talk like that from you or anyone else or myself, I can't help but think of pancakes on a Sunday, strolling down the park, swimming on the beach, in the water, in the ocean. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. Like, why don't you want goodness and happiness to enjoy the things the opportunities that the planet and that we're so graciously given on a day-to-day basis that we can't take for granted? Why would you not want to do that instead of causing harm to somebody or yourself? Like, you know what I mean? It just makes you feel better for it. Anyway,
So I want to close out with these words from the famous Don King.
All right. Well, okay.
Not Don King. Who's the guy that did Soul Train?
Don Cornelius.
Don Cornelius. That's it.
There we go.
My bad. Don Cornelius.
They both had big hair.
Yeah. They both had big hair. So, peace, love, and soul.